You know, you sent over this Neville Goddard lecture, Infinite Power, from '68. It's really something.
Isn't it just? It really grabs you.
It does. It makes you wonder, what if the power to, well, shape everything around you wasn't some, outside force, but actually inside you, deep inside?
Exactly. That's the core of what we want to unpack here, right? That's
Yeah.
the mission for this deep dive.
Yeah. So the source itself is, it's a written transcript of the lecture.
That's right, just the text. But even so, it feels remarkably present. He mixes biblical stuff, personal stories, dream interpretations. It's quite a blend.
To build this case for the power of imagination. Okay, so let's really dig into that core claim then.
Let's do it.
He comes right out and says it. Human imagination isn't just like fantasy. He calls it the power of God. Full stop.
Yeah, it's a bold opening, and he uses that Robert Browning quote right at the start, doesn't he? Truth is within ourselves.
It takes no rise from outer things.
Yeah.
It's like he's saying, look inside people, right from the get-go.
Precisely. He's setting the stage. Everything external, in his view, is a result, not the cause. It starts internally.
And then he connects it to Jesus' words from John 17. I have given them the words which thou gavest me. How does he link that?
Well, he interprets that as his own word is truth. But more importantly, that same truth, that same potential, is inside the listener, too. It's inside you.
Uh-huh. So it's not God out there sending messages. It's inherent.
That's his argument. It's a deeply intimate connection. Our imagination is that divine power, which, puts a lot of responsibility on us, really.
Okay, and this is where it gets really personal, right?
Yeah.
He talks about this profound experience he had standing before the risen Lord.
Yes. In what he calls the human form divine, he describes being embraced, actually incorporated into this body of infinite love.
Wow. Incorporated?
And then getting this message, time to act.
Time to act. So his mission became sharing this idea that God is essentially our own imagination.
That seems to be how he saw it. That was a revelation he felt compelled to share. That term, human form divine, maybe we should touch on that, what it signifies for him.
Yeah, good point. It's not just seeing a person.
Right. For Goddard, it's more like the ultimate potential of God realized within human consciousness. It's the full expression of our own divine nature.
So being incorporated means merging with that universal power, recognizing you are that power.
Exactly. Emerging a realization of interconnectedness. And time to act becomes the call to consciously use that power you've now realized you have.
Okay, so how does he make this, pretty abstract idea feel more concrete?
Yeah.
He uses that thought experiment, right? Grand Central Station.
Yeah, or the stock market.
Yeah.
Something really busy and chaotic.
And the key is arresting the activity within you first.
That's the crucial step. He says if you achieve that internal stillness, the external scene seems to freeze.
Not literally freezing time, obviously, but...
No, it's more like your consciousness is the projector, and by quieting the internal noise, you're changing the film, You're altering the blueprint of what gets projected.
And it goes further, doesn't it? He says you can then, in that frozen state, change the intentions of the people in the scene in your mind.
He does, and that when you release it, the external world will eventually shift to match those new imagined motivations.
That's a pretty radical claim, almost unsettling.
It is, and he even gives that really stark example, potentially causing harm, like suicide, through this power.
Whoa.
And this is vital. He immediately adds that you can't access that kind of power or shouldn't wield it until you're incorporated into the body of love.
Okay, so there's a huge ethical component built in. It's tied to spiritual development, essentially.
A profound one, yes. It suggests that kind of power demands a foundation of love and unity. Otherwise, it's dangerous.
And he claims he's actually done this. Arrested external activity and realized the life of others was within him.
He does claim that personal experience, yeah. It ties back to that idea of the Father having life in himself and granting it to the Son. It really challenges our usual sense of separate selves.
He really does, that we're all somehow projections of a single consciousness or deeply interconnected at that level.
That's the implication. And he brings up being called, no man comes to me save my Father calls him. But he starts teaching the technique first, almost like preparing the ground.
Right, teaching the how-to of imagination, perhaps to awaken that deeper call within someone.
Possibly. So there's hearing the message, and then there's being truly called by it, feeling that deep resonance.
Yeah, that distinction feels important. It's not just intellectual understanding.
No, it's a recognition in the soul. And he talks about God expecting us to invest the talent, this truth he's revealing wisely.
So there's a responsibility that comes with knowing this. You have to actively use it.
That's the idea. It's not passive knowledge. The talent is the power of imagination, and you're meant to use it consciously, constructively.
Okay, this leads into that amazing story he shares, the letter from the woman with the vivid dreams.
Yes, that's a fascinating part of the lecture.
So the first dream, she's in a glass room, a self-propelled carriage arrives, and Goddard is there, but as sheer, unadulterated power. And he doesn't even see her.
Right. It's striking imagery. Power, almost impersonal at first. Goddard, symbolizing this power, is just focused on its expression, not on her individually. The self-moving carriage adds to that sense of an autonomous force.
Maybe representing her initial view of it as something separate, outside herself.
Could be. Something maybe even a bit overwhelming.
Then the second dream, Marge Broom appears. A topaz hits her forehead.
Embedded with gold, he notes.
Right. Valuable. And her immediate thought is, I can break this up and sell it.
Yeah, the commercial instinct kicks in.
And boom, everything vanishes. Marge, the car, her purse, the topaz, gone.
It feels like a clear symbolic warning, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About prioritizing the external, the material gain over the actual value of the insight, the topaz.
The topaz maybe being the truth itself. And wanting to break it for money is missing the point.
Precisely. Fragmenting it, misusing it. And the immediate loss shows the consequence of that external focus.
But then, the turning point. She feels the loss, stops that thought, and consciously imagines herself with Goddard.
Actively uses her imagination.
And instantly, bam, she's in his apartment, in the dream.
Yes. That's the money shot, really. It's a direct, visceral demonstration of the principle, shifting reality, even dream reality, just by changing her inner state, her focus.
It perfectly illustrates what he's been talking about.
Absolutely. And the interruptions, the doorbell, having to wait till Monday to tell him, it almost emphasizes the dream's weight, its significance. It needed time to sink in.
And Goddard's take is that this whole sequence means she was called in the depth of the soul, because she recognized and applied the truth.
Exactly. She didn't just hear it. She experienced its power. And she saw infinite power embodied in Neville, someone she knew, but recognized it as God.
Blurring the lines between the human and the divine again.
Completely. It suggests the divine isn't remote. It can manifest right here in us, especially when we embody that creative power. And it's a deep soul-level knowing, not just thinking about it.
He then says something quite poignant, that many people see him just as Neville the man, but few see his true identity unfolding within their own souls. But then he quickly pivots and says this isn't unique to him. Every child born of woman will one day be called and embraced and sent out wearing the garment of Jesus Christ, which he equates with
the power and wisdom of imagination.
Yeah.
Yes, it's incredibly universal and empowering.
It really takes the focus off him as a special figure and puts it right back onto everyone's potential.
Absolutely. The ultimate goal isn't to follow him, but to realize that power within yourself, that now I know myself to be the power. Realization is for everyone.
So circling back to the lady's dream experience, instantly being in his apartment by imagining it, with no car, no money.
He holds that up as proof positive, a concrete example of the power in action.
It bypasses all the normal physical limitations we assume are fixed.
Exactly. No topaz needed, no friend, no car. The power is internal, independent of external props.
And he makes that comparison. External power, like wealth or even atomic bombs.
It's like a firecracker compared to an atomic bomb when you compare that to the power of imagination.
Wow, that really puts it in perspective. It forces you to reevaluate what real power even is.
It does. He's saying the potential within our inner world is immeasurable, far beyond anything external.
So the practical advice is, dwell in any state in your imagination just as though it were true. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled.
Yes, and that power, that imagination, will take you there, regardless of the circumstances. It's a direct call to action for the listener. Create consciously.
By vividly feeling it real now.
Right. Align your inner world and the outer will follow.
And he identifies Jesus Christ as this power, personified, vested in man as his human imagination.
He does. It's a reinterpretation. Christ consciousness isn't just a historical figure, but this universal imaginative faculty within us all.
Hence his statement, when you see me, you see him. Because he's embodying and teaching that principle.
That's the provocative connection he's making, yes. Seeing him living it is like recognizing that potential in yourself.
Okay, then the second dream she shared. He uses this to illustrate that everything is a symbol.
This one's really layered, too.
The setting. A dormitory, girls with charts, predicting their futures with single letters.
It suggests our lives unfold based on our underlying beliefs and assumptions. The charts symbolize those internal scripts.
And that example of the girl whose chart said her child would be kidnapped because she needed that experience. Yikes.
It's stark, isn't it? It highlights how we can unconsciously accept or even attract negative outcomes based on limiting beliefs.
But the dreamer, the lady, gets angry in the dream. She says, no, you don't have to accept that. You can revise it with imagination.
Right. She's applying his teaching within the dream. It's like a little play enacting the principle itself.
Consciously intervening against a seemingly fixed fate.
Exactly. And the doubt from the other girls in the dream, that mirrors the real-world skepticism people face when challenging those deterministic beliefs. Her leaving with her child is symbolic of taking charge of her reality.
Then she returns, her books are gone, someone else is there. But then her grandmother appears, who died years ago.
Yes, appearing young and vital. It's a complex sequence. The books being gone could be about attempts to revert to old ways of thinking, maybe external resistance.
And the grandmother. A symbol of love, timeless connection.
Could be something powerful breaking through, but then the embrace, the coolness, the body becoming rigid and falling. Goddard calls this the act of love.
It's cryptic. What could that mean? Letting go, transformation.
It's enigmatic, maybe letting go of the physical form, the past, accepting transience, or the culmination of that connection. Hard to say definitively.
And Goddard's interpretation is that she's tasted the power of the age to come. She now sees everything symbolically, people as actors.
Yes. The attempt to replace the books is meaningless because you can't really go back to the old state once you've seen differently.
And the grandmother vanishing when recognized.
Maybe this symbol dissolves once its message is received. Or clinging to the form makes the essence disappear. It suggests the form isn't the ultimate reality.
So he brings it back to his core mission, telling people about this power they might be totally unaware of.
Right. He wants to awaken people to it.
And he contrasts, say, Einstein's genius or Rockefeller's wealth, saying even that isn't enough without this understanding.
Exactly. He argues that true fulfillment, the ability to realize any desire, comes from believing this message about your own imagination, not from external achievements alone.
So when asked, what is the work of God? His answer is simple: to believe in him whom he has sent.
But crucially, he clarifies, believe the message, not the messenger, not Neville Goddard the man.
Right. Don't get hung up on him personally. Focus on the principle. The power of imagination is the divine force. That's the work.
That's the key distinction he keeps making. It's about the principle, not personality worship.
And he uses Jesus' rejection as an example, people fixated on his earthly origins, where he came from physically.
Instead of his ultimate spiritual origin, we couldn't see past the carpenter's son from Nazareth.
And he offers his own background, born in Barbados, as his verifiable physical origin, but says his ultimate origin is something different, only known through revelation.
Right. Again, drawing that parallel. Look beyond the surface. Jesus kept saying, "He who sent me." But people focused on the who they could see, not the what he represented.
So the actionable advice for us, the listeners, is basically try it. Exercise your creative power.
Yes. Prove it to yourself. Don't just take his word for it. Experience it in the depth of your being, like the woman in the dreams.
And this calling happens deep down, not just on the surface of the mind.
Exactly. It's a soul-level thing. He says the disciples being called while fishing symbolizes minds that were already receptive, states that believed.
And he makes a point that this calling has nothing to do with looks, status, money.
Right. He contrasts it sharply with what he sees as worldly concerns in some churches, using that anecdote about St. Luke's Hospital waiting for an inheritance based on Bishop Manning's lifespan.
Yeah, that's a pretty pointed example of focusing on the external, the material, rather than true faith.
He's saying genuine faith, being truly called, is purely internal. It transcends all that external stuff.
And the core message, again and again, your own wonderful human imagination is the real Christ.
That's the constant refrain.
So test yourself. See if you're really living by this faith, trusting your own power. And the lady's dream experience of instantly being in his apartment.
That's her passing the test. That's meeting the challenge, being called, because she used the power when she seemingly had no other way.
And the double dream aspect, he says, means it's fixed by God and will shortly come to pass. It confirms the truth of her experience.
Right, a double confirmation. She met the test. She's in the circle now. She understands.
Towards the end, He mentions feeling he'll vanish soon once his work is done.
Yes, a sense of impending departure from the physical.
And he talks about returning to the glory he had before the world existed, saying, I, imagination, came out from the Father.
It's a statement about his fundamental identity as that creative principle, pre-existing the physical manifestation.
His purpose now, wearing this garment of flesh, is to awaken others, form a nucleus of believers in their imagination.
Yes, progressing through stages 70 then 144, symbolic numbers of completion, or groups of believers.
And the lady's vision gives him comfort, a sign his work is finishing, his departure is near.
It seems to confirm for him that the message is taking root.
He wraps up by calling it the most glorious story ever told, how God became man, that man may become God.
And reminding us one last time that God is your imagination, the powerhouse, infinite power within you.
He gives those powerful examples again, imagining freedom in prison. The means don't matter if the imaginal act is believed.
Right. Focus on the end, the feeling of freedom, not the how. He contrasts surrendering to Caesar externally with seeking provision internally from the Father within imagination. Relying on an external God, he implies, is enslavement.
Which leads to that stark warning about seeking external power, using the story of Samuel and the people demanding King Saul.
Yes. Despite the warning they'd be enslaved, they wanted an external ruler.
And he connects it directly. You want a king, a dictator, a savior on the outside. Any power outside of yourself will enslave you.
It's a powerful, timeless warning against abdicating our own inner authority.
He finishes with Jesus in the garden. Knowing he could call angels, but choosing to drink the cup of experience to fulfill the pattern.
Right. Consciously choosing the path, knowing he is infinite power, which is myself, but accepting limitation temporarily.
To prove the principle, ultimately returning to the Father, the body of love, hearing, enter my faithful servant into the joy of the Lord.
It brings it full circle. The journey through limitation back to the full realization and reunion with the source, the infinite imagination. A journey he believes we all undertake.
So wow, if there's one huge takeaway from this deep dive, it's got to be that the power we often search for out there is actually the very fabric of our being, our imagination. It's the divine within.
Absolutely. It's a fundamental shift in perspective. Stop looking outside, start looking inside, and start using what you find there.
It really makes you think. So maybe the question to leave everyone with is, considering Goddard's ideas, what's one limitation you've always just accepted about yourself that maybe, just maybe, isn't fixed?
Yeah, what belief could you question? And what might happen if you truly started to act as if that infinite power of imagination was your power right now?
A lot to ponder there. Definitely a deep dive worth taking.